Breaking news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free dogs! Yeah!
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost?
While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you. Yeah!
For game odds and details, visit sceducationlottery.com.
Everybody, welcome back to the press. I'm Ryan Ballinger. It's great to have you here with us. This is our second show of the week. We're going to go a little bit more in depth on the Colonial, the Charles Schwab Challenge, as it is known these days. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the tournament. We'll go back over the models and horses for courses, talk course fit. We'll talk about current trends, short-term trends, first round leader type of stuff. We'll get into all that here with you in this episode. And we'll have one more this week. We'll talk about the LPGA playing their tournament this week. We'll talk about the Champions Tour here in my neck of the woods at the Senior PGA Championship at Congressional. We've got the Soudal Open in Belgium on the DP World Tour. And then we've got the Corn Ferry Tour playing once again this week. So we've got in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we've got a lot to get to in that third show, but we're going to stay with our PGA Tour event. We know most of you guys and gals watching this show are bettors on the PGA Tour, not necessarily on the other tours, even though there's a lot of value to be had on those tours, and that's why we do those shows, but we know most of you focus on this. So let's get back into it. Charles Schwab Challenge, as a refresher, this is played at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas in 1941. Perry Maxwell Jam. Perry Maxwell is one of the great architects in golf history, right up there with the modern or with the golden age architects. A little bit later than them and worked later than them. A lot of his work is kind of focused in the American South, Southwest, Southeast. His work at Southern Hills is probably the thing you're most familiar with. But this is one of his great pieces of work on a different style, different kind of version of golf, much more oriented toward strategy off the tee, high quality ball striking. I mean, ball striking wins everywhere, but a little different way of getting at that than, for example, Southern Hills. This is a par 70. It's 7,289 yards. Got stretched out just a tad when Gil Hanse's team came in and redid this place again. $9.5 million purse, $1.71 million to the winner, 500 FedEx Cup points. The champion this week. Let's go back over our model top 10. We do our model for the entire field, and that's available to our members at golfnewsnet.com. $40 for a year, $70 for 2 years, $100 for 3 years. Head over to golfnewsnet.com and sign up. You get access to that and all of the tools that we have, which are like 15 of them at this point, and then 5 LPGA tools. We run our own models for that as well, and that's gone really well this year. But for the model this week of the PGA Tour event, Scotty Scheffler's number one, and as we mentioned, I think in the first show of the week, the gap between Scotty Scheffler and Aaron Rai, right? So number one, number two in the model is about as much as from Aaron Rai at number two to the 120th, 125th player in the field this week. It is that big of a golf, and that is why Scotty Scheffler is plus 250 to win this week. But Aaron Rai is second. Tommy Fleetwood's third. Hideki Matsuyama 4. Keith Mitchell 5th. Neil Shipley 6th. Again, sample size thing there. JJ Spawn 7. Brian Harmon 8. Harris English 9. And Siwoo Kim 10. And you'll note a number of these guys had a good PGA championship, but not all of them. And to kind of get into how the sausage is made of the model, we look at 1 and 2 year windows. This is all strokes gained total stuff. I know that this is not necessarily how everyone chooses to run their model. Some people like to pick statistics every week, certain statistics. And while I understand it, I also vehemently disagree with it. You are who you are, especially over the long term. And yes, there are influences like current form, which we have as a percentage of the model, and also being a course fit or a horse for course based on performance in the tournament in the last 3 years. But horses make changes, and short-term form is not typically permanent form, whether that's bad or good. So those should be modest influences. If you want to get into a philosophical discussion about whether you should emphasize strokes gained on the approach, which I would agree with, or take out strokes gained putting, which I would also be fine with, all those things are fine. But these guys are the professional golfers. They're the best players in the world, and they got here different ways. Some players gain a ton of strokes off the tee. Some players gain a bigger percentage than their peers on the approach. Some do well putting. Some are horrible putting. Some are better chippers, some worse chippers. And that's a relatively small percentage of your shot. So I kind of do it in totality. That's the basis off of which I jump. And then that's a guiding point, right? This isn't the be-all, end-all. This is what I should be thinking about in terms of longer term thinking. And then let's inform it a little bit more. Let's inform it with some graphics we'll have in this show. Short term form, course fit, variance, all kinds of stuff that we'll get into. So to refresh, we've got some horses for courses this week. Jordan Spieth is keen among them, even though you wouldn't really jump at the chance to bet him this week. Harris English, Scotty Scheffler is a horse for every course. Davis Riley, the defending champion. Emiliano Grillo, the champion for 2 years ago. And Gary Woodland is on that list as well. Course fits. We didn't talk about this yesterday. And I'm always kind of reluctant to really lean into course fit, even though I think there is some value to it. What we do for course fit may be a little bit different than anyone else's methodology. I don't know the answer to that. But here's how I do it. So what I do is I take the strokes gained breakdown by percentage of each of the categories. So off the tee, on the approach, putting, around the green, right? I break those into percentages of the total of the players who finish in the top 25 of a field at a particular tournament. And I want to know what that breakdown looks like. And then I compare that to each individual player in the field, how they gain strokes when they finish in the top 25. Now that makes some presumptions, right? That a player has even finished in the top 25 ever, which for some players without a whole lot of experience, that may not be the case. So they may not appear on this list. But if you've got some experience, I can pretty well know that when you play well, you do these things right. And that kind of builds a profile of who you are. Now, there are some guys that are above being in a profile, right? At this point, Bryson is, Scotty is, Rory is. I think to a degree, Justin Thomas is, but not really. There are really only a few guys that I would say you can't benefit from knowing how they play, even if you don't fully buy into course fit. So course fit this week, this is in kind of relationship to that breakdown, which is about 33% strokes gained putting, 67% strokes gained tee to green. And then a little bit of a breakout. You may have a little variance in how much you gain driving it and on the approach play, but really a lot of this comes from the approach. So here's your best fits. Rico Hoey, Jordan Spieth, Keith Mitchell, Emiliano Grillo, Kevin Yu, and Bud Cauley. Obviously, we've got a champion in there in Emiliano Grillo, but this is really a ball striker's course. This is not about putting. It can be, but the putting surfaces are small. So you're not going to gain as much strokes on the field, putting-wise, unless you stick it tight, right? So think about that. Again, these are not be-all, end-alls. These are just things to consider. Past champions, went over this yesterday, but I want to refresh your memory. Davis Riley, Emiliano Grillo, Sam Burns, who's not in the field. Jason Kokrak is not in the field. Daniel Berger's playing, and Kevin Na is not in the field. Those two last guys. Kokrak and Na are on live, toiling their craft for whatever they're doing. Short-term form. Now, this is something that really comes specifically into the show, and I know this can be potentially overwhelming information for people, so I want to break it down for you. So what I do is look at the last 10 PGA Tour events played. I want to know if you're playing well in 3 different ways. And these are the measures that I use, and you can use different derivatives, you can use different ways to get to it, but this works for me, and I like it. So we're going to strokes gained total. So in the last 10 events, have you averaged 1.2 strokes gained in the aggregate per round over that stretch? If so, you're on this list. The next list is quality strokes gained, which is a measure that we use to determine a bigger importance to strokes gained in playing against better players in better fields versus weaker players in weaker fields. And that is your strokes gained total multiplied by a derivative of the first place points for the official World Golf Ranking rating of that event per week. So last week at the PGA Championship, 100 points, max points to the winner. Well, move the decimal place over 2 places to the left, divide by 2. So it's a double multiplier of your strokes gained versus a tournament where you might have, like this week, probably close to 50 points to the winner. Well, that's exactly even, right? You get 1 point for your strokes gained. And if you're playing a weaker field where you went and played an Oppo, or maybe it's 25 points to the winner, now you're getting half. And then, you do all that, and that's your quality strokes gained. And then lastly, strokes gained on the approach. I'm looking at 0.6-ish shots per round gained on the approach. That lets me know you're playing great approach play golf. You might not be doing well in other facets of the game. You might not be chipping it great. You might be struggling with putting, which is very highly variable, as we talked about. And you might not be driving it great. But if you're hitting good approach shots, you're putting yourself in a position to score and do well. So just something to keep in mind. So if you look at these three columns and then you try to see which names are on all three lists, obviously Scotty Scheffler is on all three. Davis Riley is on two of the three. That's pretty good. Bud Cauley's on all three. Very good for him. You look at Matt Wallace. He's playing pretty well, but he's on only two of the lists. He's not on the strokes gained approach list. Matt McCarty's playing well. He's on two of the three. Again, not on the strokes gained approach side of it. Daniel Berger is on all three lists, so someone you should like here this week based on that. Davis Riley on two, as we mentioned. Sam Ryder appears on one, but he's done most of his damage in week events, so he's not in the quality strokes gained category or the approach. Pearson Coody, who's playing the bulk of his time on the Korn Ferry Tour this year and playing pretty well over there. He's there in total, but also playing weaker opponents because this stuff that he gets into and not necessarily on the approach. And Siwoo Kim, he's on all three lists, so someone you should probably like here this week. Now, I also like to look at how players gain strokes, whether it's highly variable in terms of this notion of variance, right? Over a set of data, right? You want, at least in my opinion, you want players that are more steady, right? You want higher performers that are steady. So if you have a low variance number, to me, that leads me to, and you're gaining strokes at a higher level, that leads me to believe you're more consistent. You're more likely to finish well. That doesn't mean you're going to win, right? That doesn't mean anything about that. But if you're thinking about derivative bets, 10s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 40s, 30s, whatever, these are some guys you probably want to consider because they are gaining strokes well and they do it pretty consistently, which means they're probably going to show up and play pretty well, regardless of whether they like the course or not. So you got a guy like Tommy Fleetwood, who has had a great season. Do you think he's going to win? No, I don't think he's going to win because he's never won in this country. But do I expect him to play well? Yeah, I expect him to be in probably the top 15 at the end of the week. Daniel Berger, past champion. All right, he's playing well everywhere, and he's going to play well here probably based on past experience. That's probably a validation of that prior graphic and this one. Together, you think, okay, well, maybe he's a win bet. Neil Shipley. He doesn't have a lot of starts on the PGA Tour, but tends to play pretty well. So let's work with that. Alex Smalley has had a very good year. Relatively low variance. Bud Cauley, same thing. So another consistent name, guy to like. And then this is for the guys out there who are wanting to bet top 20 percentages, top 20 bets, those derivative plays. I like to look for consistency, right? I realize that that's not my favorite bet to make. I tend not to kind of fly off the handle and go bet someone on a top 20 if they're 150 to 1 and I like them. I don't tend to hedge either. But if you are into these kinds of plays, I think you can kind of start to find your value more toward the bottom of this list. I'm looking at players in the last 50 events played who, when they play, they finish in the top 20, 40% of the time or greater. So you're looking at Scotty Scheffler at the top of the list, who's like 88%. There's no value on him being a top 20. I have no idea what the minus number is. I don't want to know. But you start to kind of get a little bit lower. You get toward like Robert McIntyre, get to a better number. Matt McNeely, not so good of a number, right? He's like in the 15th best players of the world. You get Siwoo Kim, probably not as great of a number. Sometimes you get some luck here. But this is an example of this tool that I think we have that really can benefit people who play these derivative bets. And you want to kind of see percentages and then see what that relates to in terms of market relative to what they get as an outright to win. So I wanted to point that one out to you. And then we skipped over a little bit of this first round strokes gain leaders overall. But some of the guys, this is an overall list, but here are some of the players that are probably worth looking at. Daniel Berger, Maverick McNeely, of course, Cam Davis, Harry Hall for sure. But a lot, Ben Griffin, a lot of guys do their damage. Eric Cole, a lot of guys do their damage early on in a tournament. But I don't feel very strongly about first round leaders here this week for a couple of different reasons. Weather could play an issue, small putting surfaces, week after a major. There's a lot to kind of be concerned about. So all of that said, let's kind of look back at this list of players and then let's kind of make some enhanced decisions. Again, I think all of this week really comes down to whether you think Scotty Scheffler is going to win and whether you think it's worth it to have a piece of him, to bet the market with him, or bet the market without him. All of those things are up to you. But Scotty Scheffler's plus 250 to win this thing for a reason. The gulf between him and Aaron Ryan, my model, is enormous. And I've never really seen anything like that ever. So I've been doing this model for 5 years, which leads me to believe is way more likely than not, in relative terms, that Scotty Scheffler is going to win this week. So if you want to make some positions, what about a Matt McNeely? You had a great week at the PGA Championship, 28-1. I think that's a worthwhile number. Daniel Berger is an interesting play. He is the number 2 player on the board for a reason. 18-1, I don't love, and I'm not going to bet it. I'm looking for value, assuming that Scotty Scheffler is going to win. And that if he stumbles, someone will come get him. Harris English, JT Poston is a potential horse for course play. He's someone that I think people are going to be all over. Probably English and Poston, you'll see a lot. JJ Spawn had a nice weekend run, a little rally at the PGA. Tends to do well in Texas, tends to like tighter golf courses. Ben Griffin should get some play. Davis Riley will get some play. I think people will probably rightly leave Andrew Novak out of the equation, just because they perceive him as a bomber who doesn't really have necessarily as much to offer otherwise. That may be a little deceiving, but I will stay off of him. Keith Mitchell's an interesting play. Lucas Glover's an interesting play. He's kind of a horse for course. Not quite, but he is. Ryan Gerard is playing well everywhere. I'm going to bet him a lot this summer. That's going to be a problem, but I do like his game a lot. And then you got this graphic we're looking at on the right side, you've got Torbjorn Olesen. I think you should also consider Matt McCarty given those graphics that we just looked at, right? I think that's worthwhile given that he's playing pretty well. I would like to see it more like 100-1, but okay, this is from an offshore book. Shop around, find your good price. Eric Cole's an interesting number. Alex Smalley, Bud Cauley. I mean, we've talked about these guys through these graphics. Bud Cauley does really come out well in the data because he doesn't have a ton of results. I think this is a place that can work for him. I think it is. There's probably some value there. To that, Ryu Hee-Setsune had a really nice PGA championship. Didn't obviously quite figure into the stories he would have liked on Sunday, but certainly a piece of things. Then you start to kind of dig a little bit deeper, and then you start making some choices. Like a Cam Davis. I'm probably not betting him to win, and he had a pretty decent week, the PGA. But what about as a first-round leader play? That could be a way to go play him and not have to worry about all the variability. What about a Nico Echeverria? Same thing. Nice week at the PGA. Maybe he comes out hot again like he did last week. Does some damage. Rico Hoey is a first-round merchant. I do like him quite a bit as a first-round leader play. There's going to be people in Tom Hoagie. Going to be people in Jake Knapp. I wouldn't be on Jake Knapp. I wouldn't be on Tom Hoagie, really. Michael Thorbjornsen's starting to get interesting to me. We're not quite there yet. Kind of like how I felt about Ryan Fox a few weeks ago. Like, oh, he started to figure it out, and then he won. We didn't bet him. But he is starting to figure it out a little bit. I do like where his game is heading. I think there's some value in it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you bet him. And then some deeper guys that, again, really don't scream out anything to me. Guys that you should bet or shouldn't bet. Mostly not bets. But if you are interested in Neil Shipley, 175-1. Yeah, I like a Sammy Valimaki. I kind of like a Henrik Norlander to a degree. Maybe an Isaiah Salinda because I think he's playing pretty well. Other than that, I think that I do like Jesper Svensson. I do think he's getting somewhere, but it's not happening quite yet. So he could be another Ryan Fox, called it early kind of candidate. Again, as I mentioned yesterday's show, and I want to reiterate here, this is a 135 player event. Depending on who withdraws, they're not going to replace anybody at this point because it's oversubscribed. There are probably 40 or 50 guys in this field who should not even be playing, who are not going to be a factor. You got Michael Block. Thanks for coming. You're wasting our time. You got David Frost. You got Corey Pavin. You've got Olin Brown in this field. Bunch of guys in this field who are kind of the very back end of it that are ex-champions, over 50, skipping the senior PGA, all that type of stuff. Please, please, please know that. So that also reflects the value equation to a degree, not as much as the top, but a little bit at the bottom, right? Please don't try to go fishing this week. I think most of your options are probably the best between 28 and 60. If you're going to bet in that range. And then just hope Scotty Scheffler has an off week and a different week, tired, whatever it is. But please, please, please do not go much farther than 80-1. Otherwise, you're going to really probably regret it. Unless you want to go play a derivative bet. And then if you like a guy like Thorbjornsen and you want to go play a derivative bet, a top 10 or something, all right, you probably get a good price on that, right? or if you want to go play market without or something. But I do not like market without, even though I know that's realistically a possibility this week, just like it was the Masters, just like it was the PGA. And pretty much every time that Rory or Scotty tee it up for the remainder of the season, you're going to have to consider the market without either or both of those guys being a legitimate betting option for you. So taking all that into consideration, hopefully you make a great card for Colonial this week. Hopefully you're a winner. Give me a shout out. Let me know what you're betting, what you're interested in. Always happy to hear from you. We'll be back tomorrow with another show. We're going to talk about the LPGA event this week. We're going to talk about the Soudal Open in Belgium on the DP World Tour. We've got the Senior PGA Championship from Congressional. Might even do the show from Congressional tomorrow. We'll see if that pans out. And then we've got the Korn Ferry Tour in Knoxville, Tennessee this week for the Visit Knoxville Open. I actually love Knoxville as a city. Really cool place. All right. Join Golf News Net for $40 for a year, $70 for 2 years, $100 for 3 years over at golfnewsnet.com. You get access to all of our tools, modeling, and information. Contact me anytime. Get a hold of me on social media at Ryan Ballingy, Ryan Ballingy Golf, depending on the platform. Email Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com. Listen to the show on your favorite podcasting platform, including our audio-only YouTube channel, GNN Radio, Golf News Net Radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Golf News Net. And you can find this show on Golf News Net TV, which is available 24/7 on Zine, Free Live Sports, and Freecast, as well as on the Golf News Net apps for Roku and Amazon Fire. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We will catch you next time. Good luck with all your bets this week.
Breaking news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free dogs! Yeah!
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost?
While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you. Yeah!
For game odds and details, visit sceducationlottery.com.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from. So whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started. This is your before and after story. Prepare for an incredible career in nursing. At Southeastern College, experience expert hands-on training. Learn real-world skills in our professional lab and simulated settings. And train for opportunities as a practical nurse, registered nurse, or career advancement with our RN to BSN program. At Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.